People often carry stories written not in words but in scars. They are chapters of survival, yet many never bother to read them. In a busy diner on the edge of town, a young black waitress moved quietly between tables. Her smile was polite, her step steady, but whispers followed her everywhere. Her arms bore scars she never tried to hide, and instead of kindness, laughter often filled the air. Customers exchanged glances, chuckled under their breath, and treated her like a spectacle rather than a person. To them, her scars were strange, a reason to ridicule. But behind those marks lay a story of courage no one knew. She endured the quiet cruelty every day, masking her pain behind practiced warmth, never lashing out, only holding her head high. Until one afternoon, when a stranger in uniform walked in. A man whose eyes caught something others missed, the faint ink of a tattoo hidden beneath her scars. The diner was loud that day, with dishes clattering and laughter ringing out, most of it at her expense. A group at the counter smirked openly, pointing when her sleeve slid back. She kept her composure, focusing on her tray, but inside, her heart tightened. Years of judgment had taught her patience, but the sting never faded. The veteran, sitting quietly in the corner, studied her carefully. His gaze wasn't mocking, it was searching. When she placed his coffee on the table, his eyes drifted to the faded unit tattoo etched across her wrist, partially hidden by scar tissue. His breath caught. It wasn't just a tattoo, it was the emblem of his own military unit. Suddenly, this quiet, ridiculed waitress wasn't just a stranger. She was family. Memories flooded back, the battlefield, the loss, the bravery. He realized that while others laughed at her scars, those scars might hold the story of sacrifice that few could even imagine. He waited until she returned, his voice calm but firm. "Where did you serve?" The question startled her. She froze, unsure how to answer. For years, people had only asked about her scars with cruelty or pity, never respect. Slowly, she replied, "Afghanistan. 3rd Battalion." His eyes widened. "So was I." The words hung heavy in the air. The group mocking her grew quieter, their smirks fading into confusion. The waitress hesitated, scanning his face for sincerity. Then, for the first time in a long while, she spoke openly. She described the night that changed everything, a sudden ambush, the explosion, the fire that left her scarred but alive. She had carried not only the wounds but also the silence, never sharing the weight of her survival. Now, here was someone who understood. As she spoke, the veteran leaned forward, his own hand trembling, revealing identical ink on his skin. The diner seemed to shrink, every laugh replaced with silence. For the first time, the other customers saw her differently. The woman they mocked stood revealed as a soldier who had faced horrors they could never imagine. The veteran's voice broke through the silence, "You're a hero." She shook her head quickly, her eyes dropping. "No. Heroes didn't make it back." Pain rippled in her voice, each word heavy with memory. But he wouldn't let her dismiss her strength. He leaned closer, reminding her of the countless lives saved that night, the courage it took to keep fighting when everything seemed lost. She blinked back tears. For years, she had lived with shame instead of pride, letting others define her by scars rather than survival. The tables had turned now, as the room shifted with an unspoken understanding. Her scars weren't ugly, they were proof of resilience. For the first time, she felt seen, not as an outcast, but as someone who had carried unimaginable weight and still stood strong. Word spread quickly in the diner. The group that had once laughed at her now sat uncomfortably, their faces red with guilt. The veteran stood, addressing them without anger but with authority. "These scars you mock. They're the reason you can sit here freely." His words struck deep, echoing across the room. Customers shifted uneasily, some lowering their heads. The waitress, though overwhelmed, felt a spark of dignity return. She had never sought recognition, but to have someone speak for her was something she didn't know she needed. The veteran asked her to join him at his table, and as she sat down, others began to offer apologies, clumsy but sincere. For the first time, she wasn't shrinking under the weight of judgment, she was being lifted by respect. It was a small diner, but in that moment, it became a place of truth, a reminder that behind every scar lies a story of survival worth honoring. As the day went on, the bond between the veteran and the waitress deepened. They shared stories of battles fought, of comrades lost, and of the invisible wounds carried long after leaving the battlefield. For her, it was the first time in years she spoke without fear of being dismissed. For him, it was like finding a long-lost sibling who understood the silence between words. Others listened quietly, some with tears in their eyes, realizing the mistake of judging too quickly. The waitress's scars no longer seemed strange, they were symbols of sacrifice. She felt lighter, as if years of hidden pain had finally been acknowledged. The veteran told her firmly, "Don't ever hide again. You've earned every line, every mark. They're not reminders of pain, they're proof you lived when many couldn't." In that moment, laughter had been replaced with admiration. The woman once mocked was finally recognized for the warrior she truly was.